Legend of Blue Eyes White Dragon is the very first Yu-Gi-Oh! TCG core set. While the set focused on introducing the card game to the West with a bunch of weak normal monsters like Larvis or the Furious Sea King, that doesn't mean there aren't good cards. So let's look at the top 10 best cards of LOB, and this is the part where you come in. I want you to watch through this video and let me know what your thoughts on this, my rankings, if I should make more videos like this one, a top 10 worst list, a Metal Raiders list, and so forth. Number 10 is Skull Red Bird. This monster may not seem much even by the starter decks with Login and Battle Ox, however by the set's release, this was the strongest monster. There was a clear divide between bad monsters like Drooling Lizard to more meta-relevant monsters like Uraby. Yet, with Skull Red Bird's case, the 50 extra attack points made this low-level beater the highest you could pull. I remember pulling this card back in 2002 and being shocked by its power. Playing pre-format era Yu-Gi-Oh! This was the monster you wanted to find as soon as possible. While it never made any impact past the set's release, the sole impact it made during this one period cannot be denied and worthy of a number 10 spot. Number 9 is Blue Eyes White Dragon. Now I know what you're thinking. How can this high-level normal monster be on the list for reasons other than it's an anime boss monster and the set's cover card? Is this just the Charizard of LOB? For one thing, this legendary Dragon of Destruction has the highest attack of any vanilla in the game, which means if you can get him out, well, that's bad news for your opponent. Keep in mind, back in the day, many people didn't have these power card heavy optimal decks. Their lists were more whatever they had in a gumbo good stuff deck that would shock you if you ever decided to play with or against a Blue Eyes. That said, if you got a Blue Eyes out, it really could mean a strong advantage. By the starter decks, you could use Lord of D and Flute of Summoning Dragon for a dedicated dragon deck. Later Dual Monsters era would receive more support directly for Blue Eyes like Paladin of White Dragon and Burst Stream of Destruction. Fast forward to 2016 and Blue Eyes would win the World Championship with 3 vanilla Blue Eyes, meaning this monster way back when is still crucial to the modernized deck strategy. So yes, on release this card may not have been meta defining, and even still it remained to be a card of contention for competitive play for many years and thus worthy of a spot on this list. Number 8 is Maneater Bug. From 3k attack to just 450, this little insect was a powerful flip effect monster for quite some time. Its effect is simple, where it destroys one monster on the field. This can be face up, face down, your opponent's monster, or even your own. In early Yu-Gi-Oh! This was the face down card your opponent had to be afraid of. Bug's targeting effect could take out opposing monsters, from beaters like Login, to defenders like Wall of Illusion, to boss monsters like Janjo. Nothing was safe from this insect's flip effect, and it shows. Despite being such a weak stat monster, its versatility and monster removal is undeniable. Number 7 goes to Fissure. This is a simple monster removal, with the caveat being it destroys your opponent's weakest attack monster. And what if they only have one monster on the field? No problem. Similar to Maneater Bug, this was an in and out staple for quite some time. This especially doubles as a budget option and just for sheer quantity, as you could play this spell at 3 as opposed to the mass destruction cards like Dark Hole, which for most of its competitive history was sitting at 1 copy. Fissure would eventually see itself on the limited list from September 2007 to March 2009 for its basic removal like Smashing Ground and a deck spot in Gadgets. While it may not take out a Dark Magician when you're staring down multiple monsters, it can take care of other problematic threats such as defenders like Mystical Elf and weak annoyances like Spirit Reaper. Essentially, Fissure is a blocker killer, and even by the release of other singular destruction like Tribute to the Doomed or Offerings to the Doomed, Fissure still had a place in many duelist decks. Fissure me timbers! Number 6 goes to none other than Swords of Revealing Light. Speaking of blocking, this spell card is the definition of a card blocker. You are protected from attacks for 3 turns as long as this card stays on the field. It can protect you from defeat and give you time to recoup some card economy. Its stalling tactics is tough to get through in the early days of 2002 Yu-Gi-Oh! And very much an annoyance if you're about to win and suddenly your opponent slaps this card down. And if a duelist activates Swords, it flips all face-down monsters, which can not only force flip effects like Maneater Bug, but it can reveal information to make a safer play. Its power did decrease come Metal Raiders and Magic Ruler with Heavy Storm and Mystical Space Typhoon, and technically the card is a neg-1, and even still, that didn't stop Upper Deck from shifting it from semi-limited to limited, a status which held for almost 9 years. Stalling can be a very powerful tool, and Swords of Revealing Light proved that. If you're enjoying this list, consider becoming a Janjo Patreon member to help support my Yu-Gi-Oh addiction. Anyways, number 5 belongs to Trap Hole. By far the best trap out of LOB. Not that there's much competition, but still. Like many of its contemporaries, it would eventually get outclassed by cards like Bottomless Trap Hole and Torrential Tribute. However, when Trap Hole was the card, it was the card. It's a trap that could hit almost any monster your opponent was likely to play, and depending on the game state, could keep tempo in your favor. This is instant removal that has seen play as late as 2014 Track Tricks. It may not see play right now, but back then, it was exactly what it needed to be. Number 4 is Dark Hole. A different hole, but a hole nonetheless. This spell wipes out all monsters on the field. It's as powerful as it sounds. You do have to be careful because it destroys your monsters too, but sometimes it can be a benefit if you have a searcher on the field or setting up some sort of graveyard play. Sometimes it may not even be a problem if you just need a clear path for a game-ending shot. It's a Rygecki party and everyone's invited. Proactive mass removal with no cost is a recipe for a strong card, even if field presence can be a factor in playability. I mean, shit, it only got unlimited in July 2019 after being on the list in some capacity for 17 years, 7 of which this card was flat out banned. Dark Hole is the ultimate hole. Number 3 goes to another powerful spell in Monster Reborn. This card revives one monster from either player's graveyard. You can bring back that defeated Red Eyes Black Dragon, or steal your opponent's destroyed Janjo. The world is your burrito. Even at one copy from back then to even now, this card can be played in most decks. Like Dark Hole, this is a costless spell to do one simple task, which in modern Yu-Gi-Oh is wild to think about. Sure, there have been more revival cards like Premature Burial, Call of the Haunted, and Monster Reborn. However, Monster Reborn is unanimously awesome, even if other cards like Soul Charge have their own uses. It is a spell that has bounced on and off the ban list to limited status many times, and probably will never find its way fully off the list due to its lack of restrictions. This doesn't mean it's the most busted card in Yu-Gi-Oh's existence, it just means it's as great as it sounds. Number 2 is similar to a previous card, but more powerful. It's Rygecki, a spell card that destroys all monsters on your opponent's field. Simply put, this is a better Dark Hole. It doesn't cost anything, it doesn't target, and it can clear a whole side of the field. What's there not to love? While cards like Necro Valley or Bazoo the Soul Eater harm the graveyard game plan for Monster Reborn, Rygecki is a splashable power card. You don't have to worry about your own monsters, and even in today's contemporary climate, Rygecki is at 3, and decks have no issue running it at max copies if they want to, which is wild to think about how a card goes from limited straight to unlimited between October 2021 and February 2022. I guess if you want there to be a mass removal card like this one around in a fast-paced environment, you'd need to shower duelists with as many lightning bolts as you can. Because nowadays, everything needs some sort of additional effect, and regardless of powerful contemporaries like Evenly Matched, what Rygecki does in such a minimalist way cannot be ignored. A few honorable mentions before we get to number 1. Giant Soldier of Stone for being a great defender and damage poker in early Yu-Gi-Oh! Skull Servant for being a card that was able to climb from useless meme status to a full-fledged deck that saw meta play in 2017. Polymerization for being the card essential for fusion play for the entire 2002 year of Yu-Gi-Oh! And Exodia the Forbidden One for also being essential for a win condition. Number 1 couldn't be anything else but Pot of Greed. Draw 2 cards is an inherent advantage. Much like other cards of its time, this costs you nothing, and those 2 additional cards, while only a +1 on card economy, could mean a swing in game tempo. It is a combo starter by design and gives an edge to the first person who uses it. Yu-Gi-Oh! Has constantly made new cards that keep the spirit of Pot of Greed, just with drawbacks, whether it's banishing 10 cards from your deck or needing a loaded graveyard first. From October 2005 to this video's production, I highly doubt Greed will ever come off the forbidden list in any capacity unless there's some major rule change. It doesn't require your opponent to have monsters on the field or you to have to summon something in the graveyard or anything other than having cards in your deck. Sometimes the simplest effects are the strongest ones, and the Legend of Blue Eyes White Dragon proves that, with Pot of Greed being the perfect example and most definitively the best card from LOB.